I was born into a home filled sometimes with love and at other times with conflict. As a curious little girl, I loved observing the world around me, playing games with my younger brother, and listening to my mother's bedtime stories about goodness, patience, and courage. My father was a strict businessman, a strong and independent man who lived his life immersed in his work and approached everything with seriousness. His stern voice would often fill the house, yet he also provided us with protection and financial security. My mother, on the other hand, was a compassionate and kind teacher, devoted to our well-being. She would read us stories before bed and ensured that our childhood was filled with warmth and love.
I grew up navigating these two very different worlds, my father's strictness and my mother's care. I loved studying from a young age and naturally excelled in school. I dreamed of a larger world beyond the confines of our home, yet life was not always easy. When I was 7, my parents divorced. I felt fear, sadness, and sometimes guilt, as if I were somehow responsible for their separation. I did not fully understand what had happened, but I felt a void, and my daily routine changed. I moved in with my mother and brother, visiting my father occasionally. After the divorce, my father remarried, and his new wife entered our lives. She was a strict and severe woman whose treatment of us often intensified my feelings of fear and sorrow. I no longer enjoyed my days as I once had, and despite my younger brother's presence, I began to feel lonely. My childhood days were filled with challenges. I would wake up early to help tidy the house, prepare breakfast, and focus on my studies despite the difficulties. Sometimes I would retreat to my room to read or write in my diary. I poured into it every feeling, every dream, every tear, and every moment I felt injustice or oppression. At times, I would watch my father from afar, feeling sadness for the changes in him after the divorce and anger that we were no longer together as a family. His new wife would sometimes treat us unfairly, making daily life harder. Yet I learned to be patient, to search for light amid darkness. I loved my studies dearly, and often books were my only companions, an escape from pain and sorrow. I dreamed of continuing my education and becoming a strong woman who knew her rights and could achieve her dreams despite all the hardships I faced. During this period, I began to understand the value of patience, the importance of inner strength, and that every difficult experience is a lesson in life. I learned to act wisely, protect myself and my brother from cruelty, and to seek small moments of joy even amidst challenges. My bond with my mother was exceptionally strong. She always encouraged me to study and excel, reminding me that life would not be easy, but with knowledge and patience, anything was possible. She knew my little heart was full of worry and fear, and she would always embrace me, saying, "Everything will get better. Don't be afraid. God is always with us."
When I turned 16, a man 10 years older than me, 26 years old, proposed to me. My father approved of the marriage, and I felt a mixture of fear, awe, and a sense of duty. I knew I would have to leave my home and live in a new house with a stranger, possibly with children from his previous life, although I had no knowledge of that world yet. Before the wedding, I spent entire days in contemplation. I sat with my mother and said, "Mom, I'm scared. What if I can't adapt? What if I can't continue my studies?" She smiled at me tenderly and said, "My daughter, life is not always easy, but you are strong, and you can turn every experience into a lesson. Don't be afraid and trust yourself." The wedding day arrived, and I was extremely nervous. I worried about meeting my husband, how I would interact with him, and how I would live in his house. He was calm and polite, yet I felt he did not understand the depth of my dreams or my passion for learning. The early days of marriage were very difficult. My day began at dawn. I would wake up to prepare breakfast, tidy the house, care for him and his children, and try to find a place for myself within this new routine. My husband was at work most of the time, and when he returned, he expected everything to be perfectly arranged. I tried to explain my love for studying and my desire to continue my education, but he refused. The words that echoed inside me were always, "Is this fair? Is my right to learn, work, and dream of a future being taken away in this way?" Over time, I learned to balance my life as a wife and mother with the small dreams I carried in my heart. I wrote in my diary every feeling, every tear, every small joy. I wrote about the moments I laughed with my children and the moments I felt lonely and deprived. One evening, after a long day of household work, I sat with my husband and said, "I love you and I love this home, but my heart needs to continue learning. I want to finish my studies." He looked at me with stern eyes and said, "Life here is different. There is no time for studying. The children and the house are your responsibility." I felt disappointed, yet I knew that patience was the key to surviving this stage. Over the years, I gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter, and each day I discovered myself more. I learned how to be strong, how to face hardships with patience, and how to protect my small dreams even in difficult circumstances. I dreamed that the day would come when I would reclaim my life and return to my studies, achieving my dreams despite everything. On the day my father's inheritance arrived after his passing, I felt that fate had begun to smile upon me. I was no longer just a young girl bound by circumstances, but a woman who had learned how to endure and build her life step by step, even in the hardest conditions. After my father passed away, my life changed dramatically once again. I felt a mixture of sorrow for his loss and a subtle joy for the new opportunity unfolding before me. My father had been wealthy and left me a substantial inheritance, a sum of money far beyond anything I could have imagined. I spent long hours contemplating what I could do with this money, how it could change my life, and how I could secure my children's future. I sat with my husband and said, "My dear, what if we use this money to build a new house, a new life for us and our children?" He smiled, trying to appear understanding, but I felt his heart wasn't fully aligned with my vision. He attempted to suggest other ideas, such as investing in business projects, but he lacked the passion I felt for my plan. I decided to act wisely. I proposed investing the money in building a palace on the Jeddah coast, where the sun, sea, and tranquility converge. The idea was to have a place where we could live in peace, away from life's pressures, and for this palace to become a symbol of freedom and independence. The construction plan began. We purchased a large piece of land, designed the palace meticulously, and I selected every piece of furniture and every tiny detail until the house became a beautiful work of art filled with comfort and luxury. Every day, I felt joy entering each room and seeing what I had achieved. I sensed that life had begun to smile upon me after many years of patience and suffering. But happiness did not last long. One day, my husband came home with another woman and told me that she was his new wife. I felt shock, anger, and disappointment. I couldn't believe that the life I had built with love and effort could be threatened in such a way. I entered the palace in a state of shock, unsure how to act. I felt broken, but I had to protect my children and my place. I took my children and went to my mother in Riyadh, crying and devastated. I felt my life collapsing again, and all the hard work of past years seemed meaningless. In Riyadh, I sat with my mother and told her everything, how my husband came with the other woman and how she wanted to live in my house. My mother embraced me and said, "My daughter,
You are strong, and everything can be overcome with patience and faith. No one can take from you what you truly deserve. I began therapy sessions with my mother's friend, a psychologist. These were long sessions where I poured out all my emotions: fear, anger, sadness, and even moments of guilt. The psychologist taught me to handle difficult situations rationally and to focus on my future and my children rather than the past or the injustices of others. I started to regain my inner strength and began planning for the future: how to learn more, how to achieve my dreams, and how to live my life with freedom and independence, despite all the difficulties I faced with my husband and his decision to remarry.
I learned an important lesson. True strength comes from endurance and patience, and from using every experience, even painful ones, to build a better life. My father's inheritance was not just money. It was an opportunity for freedom, for a fresh start, and to prove that a person can overcome any obstacle with determination and faith.
I would wake up to my mother's voice saying, "Get up, my daughter. It's time for breakfast." And I felt the warmth of her voice easing my sadness. I prepared breakfast for my children, got their school clothes ready, and told them stories about Jeddah, the sea, and my own childhood days. After school, we would sit together to do homework, and I would explain mathematics and science lessons, encouraging them to think independently. In the evenings, we would go for walks in the nearby park. I would hear my children's laughter and feel that life was slowly returning to its natural rhythm. After some time, they encouraged me to return to my studies. I resumed my education, continued to excel, graduated from high school with distinction, and decided to pursue a degree in medicine. I applied for a scholarship abroad to the United States, taking my brother with me to act as my guardian and ensure our safety there. Every morning, I would wake up to the alarm clock and prepare breakfast for all of us. After that, I would attend university lectures, study for long hours in the library, and sometimes stay until midnight to complete assignments. After lectures, I would return home, help my children with their studies, and give them private lessons in Arabic to ensure they never forget their roots. On weekends, we would go out together to visit museums, libraries, or parks, blending education with play. I would tell them stories of my courage and patience, about their father and his wrong decisions, and teach them how to be strong and just. After 9 years of continuous study and work, I earned a PhD in plastic surgery. I returned to the kingdom and began working at a major public hospital. I treated patients with great care, performed complex operations, and exerted every effort to save the life of every person before me.
After years of studying in the United States, which I spent with dedication and hard work, I returned to the kingdom feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. My suitcase was filled with dreams, memories, and the experience I had gained abroad. The first thing I noticed upon arriving in Riyadh was the warm breeze and the city that held my childhood memories. Yet it now seemed different, larger, more challenging, and more demanding of responsibility. I began my professional journey at a large public hospital in Riyadh, a hospital known for its modern facilities and distinguished medical staff. On the first day, I felt nervous and overwhelmed, but inside I was filled with excitement. I entered the building, stood at the reception desk, and submitted my documents. The supervising doctor in the surgery department welcomed me and introduced me to my colleagues. Everyone seemed busy, focused on their work, but some smiled at me kindly, making me feel genuinely welcomed. My daily routine at the hospital began, arriving early, putting on my medical uniform, attending morning meetings, and following up on patient cases. I worked in the plastic surgery department, a highly precise and sensitive specialty. The first operation I performed was with an experienced colleague, I felt extremely tense, yet the knowledge and skills I had acquired allowed me to proceed with caution and precision at every step. Challenges arose daily, emergency cases arriving from all over the kingdom, complex wounds, critical injuries, and patients requiring constant attention. I worked long hours, but every small success filled my heart with joy and pride. I felt that all the effort of past years, every moment of patience, and every tear had led to this achievement. My social life also changed after returning. I would wake up early, prepare breakfast for my children, organize the house, and head to work. My responsibilities were doubled between home and the hospital, but I learned how to manage my time and balance my professional and personal duties. I felt I was living a complete life, one full of achievements and responsibility for myself and my family. The colleagues at the hospital were cooperative, and over time I became part of the team. Their appreciation increased my self-confidence. I learned that success does not come easily, but through diligence and perseverance, and that every challenge is an opportunity to learn something new and improve my skills. As the days passed, I began to realize that working in the hospital was not just a profession, but a humanitarian mission. Every life I saved and every smile from a patient was a true reward, making every effort and sleepless night worthwhile. I felt that I could now serve as a role model for my children, proving to them that determination and a passion for knowledge and work can achieve anything, no matter how great the challenges.
It was an ordinary day at the hospital. I began my usual work in the plastic surgery department, checking on patients, preparing the day's operations, and reviewing the upcoming case files. Suddenly, I received urgent news. There's an emergency. A man and his wife after a severe car accident. Hurry to the emergency room. I felt a twinge of tension, but my focus was on the task at hand, saving their lives. I entered the emergency room and quickly assessed the situation. The injuries were severe: facial lacerations, multiple fractures, damaged nerves, and organs requiring immediate intervention. When I looked up, I saw the man's face. My heart stopped for a moment. It was him, my ex-husband, the person who had taken years of my life, who had wronged me and taken what was rightfully mine, and now he was in front of me, injured, needing my help. I felt a mixture of shock, anger, and gratitude that he was alive, yet the medical tasks were paramount. I had to set my emotions aside. The operation began, each step precise. I treated every wound carefully, monitored his condition, and requested anything the medical team needed swiftly. His wife, also injured, required special attention. The situation was delicate, and every medical decision could determine their fate. During the surgery, my ex-husband watched everything with difficulty, his eyes filled with a mix of pain, regret, and fear. He didn't speak, but he knew I was the only one who could help him now. I felt a strength within me, a power I had never known before. I set all past emotions aside and focused on saving their lives, remaining completely professional and prioritizing humanity above all else. The operation lasted for many hours. I moved between the operating table and the medical team, monitoring every tiny detail, reconnecting severed nerves, and reconstructing wounds to reduce pain and improve cosmetic outcomes as much as possible. I was exhausted, but my determination to save their lives was stronger. After the surgery, we all gathered in the emergency room to monitor their recovery. I felt inner tension as I watched my ex-husband try to catch his breath. Finally, he looked at me calmly and said, "I never imagined I'd see you here. I didn't think fate would bring us together like this." I didn't respond. I simply continued monitoring his condition. I knew that words mattered less now, and what was important was giving them a new chance at life after the accident. I felt old emotions stirring, but they were different, full of strength, and the ability to remain in control of the situation.
In the following days, I closely monitored their progress, checked every detail of their recovery, and devised a plan for physiotherapy and rehabilitation. I realized that life had given me an opportunity to prove to myself and my children that true strength lies not in revenge or resentment, but in the ability to forgive, act wisely, and show humanity, no matter how difficult the circumstances.
The greatest surprise was not merely his appearance, but that the man himself came before me shortly afterward and requested a private meeting. I felt a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief, yet I agreed to the meeting because I wanted to understand why he had come after everything that had happened. We sat in a quiet room, away from the eyes of others. His eyes held a mixture of shyness, regret, and fear, as if all the years of distance and stubbornness had not been enough for him to realize his mistakes. He looked at me and said in a trembling voice, "I came to ask for your forgiveness, and I want to return to you what I took, the palace, everything." My heart stopped for a moment. I felt a strange shock, followed by a rising anger within me. How dare he appear after all he had done, after all the years of injustice, after every moment I had felt weak and afraid? I tried to control my tears and said slowly, "Why now? Why after all this?" He sighed deeply and said, "I have realized my mistakes. I know how much I wronged you, and I want to make things right. I know words are not enough, so I came to return what is rightfully yours." I was confused, thinking of the past and present. He could have made his decisions long ago, yet now he was asking for my forgiveness and offering the palace. I felt torn between the desire to retaliate and my anger, and an inner sense of satisfaction that justice had finally arrived in some way. I said firmly, "I will not forgive you yet. Not after you took years of my life. Not after you deprived me of my education and my freedom." He smiled sadly and said, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I am sincere. I ask that you accept the palace, that it be yours and your children's, and that I act in the best interest of you and our family." I took a deep breath and reflected on what lay before me. The palace, the memories, the pain, the years of patience, all of it flooded my mind. I said, "The palace is not just a house. It is the memories of my life, the effort of my years, everything I built with my own hands. I will accept it, but not for forgiveness, but because it is my right, and because I want to reclaim my dignity." He smiled and quietly said, "That is all I wish, for you to know that I acknowledge your right and that I respect you now." A few days later, the ownership of the palace was officially transferred to my name, and I felt a freedom and inner peace I had not experienced in many years. It was not about the money or the property, but about reclaiming my strength, my life, and the ability to move forward. As I saw the palace return to me, I felt gratitude to God Almighty for every experience, every challenge, and every tear, for they had made me stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing life with confidence.